1. Okay, so a bit of context. This took place when an old man, Doug, that I lived with, got married. He and I live on a ranch taking care of cattle. Doug's son also moved in with us shortly after with his girlfriend. When Doug met this woman, she refused to even sleep under the same roof with him, until they were married, because she claimed she was very religious. She also very recently divorced her husband when they met. A couple months go by, and after showing up from school, I was still in high school, I find a woman in the house unpacking her things. This woman is Bessie. I call the old man asking about Bessie, where he tells me that they just got married, and she will be living with us now. At first I was shocked, but I'm very adaptive, and soon we fell into a new routine. At first, Bessie was fine, but it soon became obvious that she was not who she claimed to be. She claimed to be a cowgirl and rode horses, but after she moved in, she confessed she hadn't rode a horse in over 20 years and gave every excuse in order not to ride. She also hated any family other than her own. I remember when my dad was going to visit for the first time in a while, and we informed her. She spoke with my folks over the phone, and she pretended to be very friendly with them, even asked if they could help her move in some things that she recently bought. She then left the ranch to go see her family, supposedly, the day before mine was supposed to show up. She didn't return until a couple of weeks later when my family and Doug's son left, leaving us alone again. She was constantly very aggressive when it came to cleaning. Also, when she would cook, if she would make a mistake, especially with desserts, she would leave me those plates and serve the best for herself. For example, she would intentionally burn cookies and leave those for me to eat, while others would be on separate plates wrapped for her and Doug. She also made a batch of fudge once, and when I walked in to take a peek, she snarled at me saying I was to have none. I just smiled, said okay, and walked away. An hour later, she gives me a whole plate saying she was just joking, and she hoped I enjoyed the fudge. I took one bite to know that the only reason why she gave me this batch was because the sugar didn't cook, and it was as if you were chewing on sand. Okay, now on to the story. On this particular day, I awake to find Bessie to have made breakfast all for herself, leaving Doug, his son, his girlfriend, and me to fend for ourselves. This was a regular thing. I get started chopping potatoes, cooking eggs, offering for everyone else if they wanted some. I have a very old-fashioned electric stove that is white and constantly got burned, leaving dark black residue on the burners that was very visible. I made breakfast for everyone and turned off the stove to let it cool off. Electric stoves, or at least this one, take quite a while to cool off. Betsy made it a rule to scrub the black residue off this stove after every use. I gathered my things and go to sit down to eat my breakfast. This is where an all-familiar Karen tone snaps at me. "What are you doing?" I calmly reply, "I'm sitting down to eat my breakfast while the stove cools." She didn't have to tell me to know what she wanted.
"No, you need to clean it now,"
Bessie practically screamed. Nobody said a word to her, and just looked at me to see what my next move was. I calmly looked her in the eyes and asked her, "So you want me to clean off the stove while it's still burning hot?" She just stared at me with daggers and yelled,
"Yes!"
Cue malicious compliance. I gave her my best poop-eating grin and just told her, "Okay." Leaving my food where it was, I got what we cleaned our stove with, Ajax, water, and a steel wool scrubber and went to work. She watched me as I sprinkled the Ajax on the stove, which did nothing at first. But the second I poured water on it, all hell let loose. I grabbed a rag and held it over my mouth to hold my breath from the vile gas that rose from the stove. It was so thick and white that it instantly filled the room with what I assume was a toxic gas and gave everyone a coughing fit. But I was determined. I went to scrubbing the stove, alternating between hands and wrapping the steel wool in paper towels to keep it from burning my hands. One by one, Doug and his son and his girlfriend slowly left the room with their food. But Bessie just looked down at the table and continued eating, only looking up at me every couple of seconds to make sure I didn't stop. She didn't say a word as I continued to clean the stove. We were in the kitchen as I continued to make this toxic gas on the stove. After about 5 to 10 minutes of scrubbing, I got it close to her standards and wiped off the stove. The gas still lingered in the air as I smiled at her and grabbed my plate and walked through the front door to eat outside. She never left the kitchen, and she sat in what I assumed was defeat for my malicious compliance. I still smile at the thought of it. 2. So this goes back to my university days. My friends and I got a townhouse together in a complex that was pretty much 100% students. The landlord also owned 3 or 4 other townhouses in the complex. He seemed like a great guy, especially compared to some of the sketchy people we'd met during our search. The first year went great, but landlord had a heart attack. Thankfully he survived, but decides to sell his townhouses to lower stress and retire. New landlord comes over to say hi and immediately is like, "We need to change things around." So the rental lease we had meant the landlord was to pay all water and electricity. This was common for most student housing because it would be a pain for students every year to sign contracts with water and electrical providers. She tells us that she is going to install a device, I think it's called a governor, on our water heater so that it will not fill up during peak hours, daytime, telling us we have to do laundry at night. She didn't mention we might not get hot showers during the day. She tells us it's not that big a deal and all the other places have them. She tries to trick, bully, coerce us into just letting her do it. One of my friends tells her there is nothing about that in the lease, so she can't legally do that. She leaves, but keeps pushing us to install the device. Later in the year, she comes over to berate us for our energy use. She presents us with the energy bills for a few townhouses she owns, and points out how we're the highest. We point out we're a 5-bedroom townhouse, and the one she's comparing us to are 3 or 4 bedrooms. Meanwhile, she's ignoring any repairs to our unit and questioning when something went wrong, implying it predates her buying the unit from the original landlord. She wasn't liable to fix it. Her calls to get the heater device and get us to use less electricity finally pushed my roommate Merlin to exact some PettyRevenge. Merlin decides he wants to see how much electricity we can use. The meter outside our unit shows a dial going around clockwise that monitors our electricity usage. Normally it might do 1 rotation in a minute. Merlin wants to see how fast he can get it going. So he goes around to all the housemates and asks them to turn on all their computers, TVs, stereos, anything that has a plug. He hits the override on the water heater to get it to fill, turns on the laundry, dryer. He was actually doing laundry, so not being a total dick. Then the coup de grace, turns on the oven and all 4 burners. We go outside and he had got it up to 1 revolution a second. This does not last long as he blows a fuse in the oven and decides he's gotten his PettyRevenge, so we go back to normal. I guess the electricity bill for that month was much higher than normal, and so on the next call from the landlord, she seemed resigned to us not giving in to her demands. I believe Merlin told her that we can curtail our electricity usage if things get fixed around here. Addendum. So the one most needed repair in our townhouse was on the 2nd floor of the 3-floor unit. There was a little hallway between the living room and the kitchen. Being a high-traffic area, it took a lot of wear and tear. At some point, we noticed the floor, which was carpeted, was soft. We suspected that the floor underneath was falling apart, but the landlord ignored it. The problem in the floor only grew until we had masking tape around the circle in the floor, indicating the danger zone. I did not stay in the place the next year because she was making people sign a new lease. But they did get the landlord to fix the floor. She sent her son over, and he ended up falling through the hole in the floor into the ceiling below. My friend was on the 1st floor and saw a leg appear above him. Says it was the funniest thing ever. 3. My dad passed away when I was 10 years old, and this story takes place about a year or 2 afterwards. I honestly don't remember exactly how long it had been, since a lot had been going on to blur those years together, but I do remember my mom was still very distraught about his death. I think this was one of the first times I actually saw her leave the house since his passing. Also, I'm naturally very tiny, So while I was probably like 12, I definitely looked at least half that. On this fateful day, I had to go to the doctor's office. I had pink eye. But again, I don't really remember. My mom sat me down in the little receptionist office and grabs the paperwork to fill out. My mom always used humor to deflect her pain, so it wasn't strange to hear her mumble. Second guardian, parent address. I don't know how Heaven's addressing system works. Guess that's gonna be left blank. What was strange was when she returned to the receptionist counter. I was bored out of my mind, and it was a tiny waiting room, so all I could do was watch the scene unfold. My mom turns to come sit with me again, but is stopped. "Excuse me, ma'am." She turns back to face the receptionist. "Yes?" "You didn't finish your paperwork." My mom, ready to do her job and ensure her daughter had medical care ASAP, grabs the paperwork off the counter. She flips through it. "No, looks like I got it all." "Ma'am, we need a second parent listed." "Oh, he's no longer in the picture." "I'm sorry, but I still need an address." My mom lowers her voice, almost too quiet to hear. "I mean, he passed recently. I don't have an address." "Ma'am, I can't file the paperwork without one." "He's dead. I can't give you one." "Then I can't file the paperwork." "So you're telling me I need my deceased husband's current address to get my daughter looked at?" "Yes, ma'am, I can't file the paperwork until it's completed." My mom isn't normally one to make a scene, especially not somewhere like a doctor's office. Keyword, normally. I watched my mom open her mouth, close it, take in a deep breath, and nodded. My mom then spoke aloud. I almost think she embellished the heartbreak in her voice, making sure everyone could hear. "Well, I hope a plot number works for my husband's address, because that's all I can give you." The woman immediately starts to panic. There's no way her bosses didn't just hear that. And I could already see people standing up. I assumed to defend my mom's honor. She started trying to take the paper from my mom's hands. No, don't worry, I don't need one. This is good enough." She glared at the woman. "No, you said you can't file without an address, so I'm giving you one." My mom's also super stubborn when she gets frustrated. She held on to those papers like they were my dad's final words. Tears were streaming down her face. I'm still not sure if it was from anger, grief, or an equal mix of both, as she scribbled out his plot number. She didn't move from the desk, but it didn't matter. Everyone was looking at her in stunned silence. My mom had to grab her phone to get the proper number, which involved returning to our seats where her purse was. Everyone turned to glare at the receptionist when she saw my poor mom had a child. When she did return with her phone, a different woman was standing up front. She politely told my mom the plot number wasn't necessary, apologized for the other person, and told her she could happily return to her seat if she likes. Did I already mention my mother is stubborn when pissed? The tears were still coming, but my mom had a blank expression. "You cannot file paperwork without a second parent's address. I will provide you with one." And after a second of navigating her phone, confirmed what she wrote down was correct, and returned to our seats. The other receptionist did not return while we were there. I also remember my mom being pleasantly surprised when she went over the bill for that. Got a hefty discount, like 60% off. 4. So, there's a chain of supermarkets that sells rotisserie chicken, like the ones at a store that starts with C and rhymes with Osco. The chickens are usually $8.79. But there's times when the supermarket is near closing hour, 8 p.m. They close at 9 p.m. When the cooked items that are left, grilled ribs, rotisserie chicken, chicken wings, the usual, are set to sell approximately 30% of their actual price. So that $8.79 chicken sells for $3. I entered the supermarket at 7:30 p.m. and saw that there were some items and 6 full chickens on display. I start shopping around since I hadn't eaten. I spent more time than I intended to. I was trying to decide whether I really needed that item of choice or it was my stomach being a brat. I got to the cash register at 7:59 p.m. and asked the cashier if the chickens will be on sale. She tells me to wait while she speaks to her manager. He comes and says, "Yes, we'll be putting them on at $3. Just wait a little bit to confirm and for the new price tags to be placed so you can pay." I paid for my items and the cashier tells me to wait near, so she can call me up when the price tags are ready. A couple of elderly ladies that heard the conversation ask if they can also have one chicken. The manager, who already had counted the chickens, says, "Sure, there's 6, so yes, 1 each." As I was waiting by, I started to make small chat with the security guard, and he says, "Listen, Doc." I was wearing my scrubs, and I'm kind of a regular. "See that lady that just came in? I know her modus operandi. She comes in at this hour, when there's chicken left, and she buys them all, so heads up." So I walked from the area I was waiting to go buy the chickens, and there's Karen, I kid you not. Karen haircut, white shirt with a company logo, blue jeans, heels, and that absolute Karen manicure. She's staring directly at the chickens. We wait for 3 minutes or so, and the manager comes with the tags, and Karen opens her mouth. Without saluting, she says,
I'll take all 6 of them. Can I go pay while you tag them? I'm in a rush.
The manager says, "I'm sorry, miss, but I can't sell them all to you. As you see, we have 2 people waiting in line for one. And another person who's still shopping but asked me about the chicken sale when I was coming here." And Karen starts to argue that she's been waiting in the car since 7:40 p.m., and that she came last time and bought 5, and then she added, "Which, by the way, were burnt and terrible and dry. I mean, can't you look into that? Like using some oil preparation inside the chickens to make them juicier." The manager, with absolute calm and respect, responded, "I sincerely thank you for your patience and your loyalty as a customer, but I'm afraid that since they'll be on sale and there's people waiting, I can only sell you 1.
So I waited 23 minutes for 1 chicken? You cannot do that. Last time I bought all of them. Ask the cashier.
"Yes, ma'am. But maybe last time there weren't customers waiting. There's another type of cooked food on last-minute sale." And I've had enough. I asked the manager, "Hey, listen, you haven't put the tags, right? So that means they're on full price? That means I can buy them all at full price, right?" He looks at me kind of surprised and he says, "Yes, since they're not on sale right now, you can buy how many you want." Okay, I'll take the 6 of them at full price. At this moment, my brain was telling me, "You can't stop now, you petty mofo. Good for you. You stood up." My stomach was like, "Yay, 6 chickens!" But at the same time, like, "Nay, 6 whole chickens." So I started to put the chickens in my cart as Karen stood there with her mouth open. She then puffed and huffed and walked out the store. As I was walking to the register, my heart was pounding and racing, and my brain was like, "Good luck explaining to your wife why you bought 6 rotisserie chickens to make a point." As I unload the chickens on the register, the manager comes in and says, "Here," and he starts to put the discount price tags on the chicken, and then he asks, "You're buying them all? Because those ladies want one, and the other person in the store wants one. Also, I want one, and the lady on the other register wants one." And I go, "Well, I only need 1, so you guys can have the rest." He then proceeded to explain that when food items went on sale, the workers usually buy them at closing time. I shared a saluting gesture with the old ladies and paid for my chicken, and went out of the store with a big petty smirk on my lips. Justice won. 5. Many years ago, I was working for a small business as a service technician for a technology company. On one particular week, the boss had asked me to clear my entire week coming up because he had a ton of work just for me. So thinking business as usual, I clear everything. He calls Sunday night and says every last ticket was cancelled, says sorry. I'll call again if anything changes. I was pretty mad. I had a bit of a reputation at this company as the joker. I always played practical jokes. Not like the nonsense you see now where someone is screaming it's a prank right before someone is about to get beat down. On with the story. Quick note, while the boss ran a technology company, he wasn't tech savvy at all. So Monday comes and goes. Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm bored to tears. No current projects or anything going on, and then the light bulb clicks. I cracked open my laptop and Googled mailing lists. It started out with just retail stores. It had a lot of spam emails. Every single possible website I came across that had a mailing list, he was signed up for. He got free magazine subscriptions, catalogs, you name it. I spent the better part of 2 days signing him up for everything I could think of. He calls me up Sunday night, Says we're taking a day trip to do some service calls out of town. I can ride with him. One other tech is on the trip too. I jump in the back seat and can't help but hear ding 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 every few seconds. I'm in the car for no time at all and start noticing his phone is going off non-stop. I pull out my phone to look occupied. I lose it. I bust out dying of laughter. So much that he asks me if I'm okay because I'm turning colors from laughing so hard. After a few minutes of me dying in the back seat, he asks what's so funny. I put my calm face back on and just tell him a funny story online. We're halfway through the trip, phone still dinging every other second. He turns around and looks me dead in the face. "Did you do this?" It took everything I had to keep a poker face to mutter out, "Do what?" "These damn emails won't stop." He's opened them, tried to unsubscribe, mark as spam. They keep coming, all day, all night. I maintain my poker face and manage to tell him I was busy helping some pals work on something all week. He lets it go and we move on. However, the emails did not. A week goes by and I'm working with a friend and he asks me about it. "Boss thinks you did that email job because you didn't work that week." I brush it off and act like I have no idea how to even do that. He tells me he was there shortly before meeting up with me and heard them going off non-stop. It was around 2 years after that. We were having a company gathering at some restaurant. Everyone was telling funny stories of workplace shenanigans. I spoke up. I said, "I've got one everybody at this table is going to die over." Pointed at the boss and said, "Except you." I told the story, even mentioned the car ride and me laughing to death. His response was, "I fucking know it was you." I was fired some years down the road, but not for that. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 166. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please show a little love, hit that like button, and share the video with somebody. And take a look in the description for any Hellfreezer related links you might want to click on. Alright, now as this is a weekend, as originally uploaded, I'm going to keep this short and let you all get back to your weekend. And I'm also going to go rest my voice. So let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... Alright, this is one from my fellow nerds. Since we can safely talk about liking comics these days, we used to have to keep it a secret. There were special handshakes and things. Oh wait, no, that was Freemasons. Oh, never mind. Anyway, so a favorite comic book character, well, not necessarily your favorite, just one you like that's never had an adaptation and you would like to see them in live action in one form or another. I think for me, I'm going to pick a team, right? And it's actually The Authority. Now, The Authority is, they were technically DC, but under the Wildstorm imprint. Group of heroes, various writers over the years, but created by the writer Warren Ellis. And I like all the characters, but my two favorites are actually Apollo and Midnighter. They're very heavily based on Superman and Batman, but they're a couple. And Midnighter even wears white at the wedding, which I thought was very sweet. So I'd be very curious to see how they'd handle that live action, given that there are many similarities between, as I say, them and Superman and Batman, apart from them being lovers. But let me know what you think, let me know what your favorites are, and leave them in a comment below. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much. I'm going to have some ice cream, maybe. Thank you very much for... Thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.